The terrorist group is reportedly trying to send undercover agents to Europe in the guise of refugees. That's according to German media reports citing American intelligence. This year alone, tens of thousands of refugees from Syria and Iraq reached Europe. Italy and Greece, they're the main points of entry. Most then move on to seek asylum in other European states, with Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, Switzerland and Bulgaria as well among the top destinations. RT's Polly Boyka has the latest on Islamic State's alleged plot to take advantage of the refugee crisis.
This all comes from a document that's been leaked in the media today, and it reveals that Britain, along with 7 other EU countries, and they include Spain, Germany and France, they are going to push Brussels to restrict free movement rights within the European Union, and that would be by stepping up border controls in order to stop these Islamic State militants that have gone off to fight in Syria and Iraq from returning to the European Union. It's feared that some 3,000 jihadists that are currently fighting in Syria and Iraq have either EU passports or the right to travel freely within the EU. And so Europe has in place this borderless system. It's called the Schengen Agreement. There are no checks made on the borders there. And although Britain's not part of the Schengen Agreement, the checks made between Britain and the EU citizens are very random. So it's difficult to rely on them. So we know that the British Home Secretary Theresa May, according to this document, will be speaking to ministers in Brussels about this now. And there's a sense that the politicians want to think about beefing up security, but at the same time they have to toe the line of not compromising the founding principles of the European Union. And it's not likely to be easy. There's likely to be opposition to it from opposition MEPs in Brussels. And of course, Britain and other EU countries are now carrying out those airstrikes against the Islamic State over Iraq. They're considering expanding into Syria. And judging by this document, they're taking the threat of retaliatory attacks extremely seriously now. There are also concerns from leaks in the German media about how detailed these plans from the Islamic State are about committing acts of terror in Europe. We know from US intelligence they've allegedly managed to decode some conversations that have taken place between Islamic State leaders, and they were allegedly discussing plans to disguise Islamic fundamentalists as Syrian refugees and send them across the border into Turkey and then onto Europe with the sole purpose of committing acts of terror. And according to diplomats quoted in the press this morning, governments in Europe are absolutely terrified about that prospect.
For more, let's now bring in Middle East expert Edmund Gharib to discuss this further. That scenario of jihadi terrorists making their way into Europe as refugees, how likely a situation is that?
The danger is real. How perhaps sometimes it's a bit exaggerated, but Western intelligence worry that if 1 or 2 or 3 incidents occur, this could backfire on them, and it could be very embarrassing to the intelligence agencies and to the government. But at the same time, this also shows a realistic problem, and that is that European countries, Western countries in general, have not been that welcoming. They have not to the Syrian refugees. They have not taken too many Syrian refugees, while sometimes criticizing small countries which have taken millions. For example, whether it's in the Middle East, Lebanon, a small country like Lebanon, has taken over 1.5 million refugees, and the whole population of the country is 4 million, and not enough support has been given. At the same time, however, I think the real danger that scares the Europeans even more than the Syrian refugees is the return of fighters who had gone to Syria, to Iraq, to join the ISIS or to join other extremist groups, and the return of these fighters back.
Just talking about fighters, Kurdish militias in Syria say airstrikes against the Islamic State are not helping them, and what they need instead is weapons and ammunition. Do you think it's possible to defeat the jihadists using airstrikes alone?
Most experts, whether they are on the left, on the right, military experts, don't believe that they could be defeated by airstrikes alone. And actually, the U.S. military has been calling on the media, which has been much more gun-ho, to basically show patience and realize the difficulties. And so they are saying this is going to take months and perhaps years. So this will not happen. But the reason why this is also, this issue is coming up is in part because the right wants, in the U.S. at least, wants to go to send U.S. forces on the ground into Iraq, and has been critical of the administration for not doing so. The progressive forces, however, would argue that force does not work, the use of force does not work, has not worked in the past, either in Iraq or in Afghanistan, and that it only serves to spread chaos and to promote and strengthen extremism.
Let's just get your thought on another issue briefly. The Pakistani Taliban has pledged its support to Islamic State. How could this influence the situation on the ground in Iraq and in Syria?
Well, clearly, this is very significant development here. Taliban, which is and in Pakistan, which is a very radical group, is basically showing that it supports the idea of the caliphate of the Islamic State. It may be also a call to bring attention to their confrontation with the Pakistani authorities on the one hand, and what they are trying to do in Afghanistan on the other. But I think this is very significant and shows that ISIS, and as we begin to see this coalition emerge, they are also getting support from other areas and trying to mobilize followers, and they are getting sympathy for their stand.
Edmund Gharib, Middle East expert, thank you for talking to us this hour.